Ladies, welcome on in. I am so excited because today is our 100th episode. If there was a fanfare, I would have it going right now. But I'm just so excited because it's been such an incredible journey producing 100 episodes of this incredible show, Her Ambitious Career. It's been such a revelation to me building a podcast and coming here every week to you. And I'm just so excited. And I was talking to my very, very good friend, Steph, who's also here with me. Hi, Steph.
Hello.
And Steph and I were talking over a glass of wine not long ago. And I was saying to her, Steph, I've got this 100th episode coming up and I really do not know what to produce. I don't know what to bring. I don't know whether we should do something special, should do something different. And Steph said to me, why don't I interview you? So here we are, ladies. Steph is going to interview me today. I'm going to be the interviewee. So hopefully I give you some interesting, useful information today on the podcast. But yeah, we thought it'd be a fun way of flipping the show and bringing you something different. So I'm going to hand right over to Steph, who is going to take charge from here on in.
Well, welcome everyone. Delighted to have you here listening. And it's an absolute pleasure and honor of mine to be introducing my great friend Bex here. And really to mark this incredible milestone of 100 episodes. So, huge congratulations.
Thank you.
And to kick things off, I mean, an obvious question, I'm not sure if you've covered it already, but, what is it that made you get into coaching? You have a brand, you have this great track record under your belt now. What was the impetus for that at the beginning?
I love that, Steph. Well, I mean, I used to work in a corporate environment. Yeah, I used to work in advertising in London way back when. And I kind of got to a point where, a lot of my clients actually get to now, which is, is this all that's there for me? Is this it? And I remember sort of thinking, I was actually sitting on a park bench. I remember it very vividly in Hyde Park, in Knightsbridge in London. And I was sitting there having my lunch and thinking, really, there's got to be more to work than doing what I'm doing. I mean, I really enjoyed what I was doing, but I just felt like there was more to it. And so I started to investigate, what I really, really love doing. And it was a big, obvious one for me because I was very much into my own personal development and professional development. And I thought there's got to be something in here that I could explore. And I started just to explore it in a huge way and started talking to loads of people in the industry and surrounding industries, and then started to retrain while I was still working. And eventually, after, quite a long time, I ended up deciding to set up part-time as a coach, which I first did in my apartment block. And I offered my services to my neighbors, essentially, to start with. And you know what? You sort of start as a generalist and you start to try and understand really where you're strong and where you have passion and where you have interest. And it started to become really apparent to me fairly early on, actually, that I just really enjoyed working with women. And I could see that a lot of the corporate women, particularly that I was working with, were having lots of similar challenges. Some of them, internal, some of them around mindset, and some of them around, self-promotion and just sort of putting themselves out there and backing themselves, but also those big external barriers that a lot of women still encounter, believe it or not, in the 21st century, which just makes me cross, right? And it just makes me mad that we have all these barriers still that are still very much apparent today. And I just decided to niche in that area of working with, with corporate women and helping them really thrive in their careers. So, yeah, I mean, that was 14 years ago now. So it's been a very, very long journey. I have learned an absolute stack. Not just about coaching and how to be a better coach, but also how to run a business. Yes. And also how to become a better me. I think a big part of coaching is preaching what you, living what you preach.
Yes.
And, I'm very mindful all the time of, working on myself. I do a lot of my own personal development. I'm always learning new things, going on trainings a couple of times a year to make myself a better coach, business person, but also a better me.
That's fantastic, Bex. And, we're all the better for it. And I think I'm going to circle back to the continually working on you. But before we do that, you talk about your passion for working with women and in the corporate sector, presumably a lot of what you speak to women about in the corporate sector can be generalized to women outside of the corporate sector. And, you know, getting into that area, was that because you noticed that there was a gap specifically there, or, you know, what made you kind of dive in there, and where did you see that you added value that wasn't currently in existence?
I love that, Steph. Such a challenging question to give me. I love it. Okay, let me have a think about that one. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, coaching generally is about helping you become a better version of you, if you like, in a very broad sense. So, you know, you have life coaches, you have business coaches, you have career coaches. There's literally a coach for everything, you know, health coaches. And yeah, 100% starting to kind of, I started in that generic way where I was looking at everybody. It wasn't just women either. And, you know, I know a lot also that a lot of the problems that the women who I coach, men have as well, of course. You know, of course, men struggle with confidence from some time to time. Of course, some men really struggle to self-promote. You know, but, you know, I think that I don't coach men. So I talk a lot about the challenges that women have, but it doesn't necessarily mean that men aren't having those same problems, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But I do think women do have unique challenges. 100% they do. I think any minority group is having challenges that are unique to them in the corporate space. You know, I would love that, you know, senior leadership recognize that everybody is having such a different experience to senior leadership, because they really are. Everybody's having a different experience every day when they come to work. And it's really important with bias and all these kinds of things that we challenge how we naturally see how people are existing at work. Are they surviving only, or are they thriving at work? And that's a big, big question that, you know, senior leadership needs to be asking. But yeah, I mean, there is a gap. There is to come back to your question, there is definitely a gap, you know, in terms of the support that women get. You know, I don't want to criticize what's available to women in corporate environments, because it's important that we have training in corporate environments. But I find that a lot of the women who I talk with, because obviously I'm a private coach, I'm external to a company, a lot of the women who I talk with say that the training that they get in-house is very skills orientated. So it's how to be a better leader, yes. You know, how to manage a team. It's very kind of tactical and practical. And but I think what that kind of training can often miss is this sort of challenge around mindset. And if, for example, you're a woman who is struggling to identify as a leader, or has confidence issues around being a leader, or feels like there's a bit of imposter syndrome going on around, I hate that word, imposter syndrome, but you're feeling a bit of an imposter in the space, you know, am I ready? Have they promoted me too early? If any of that stuff's going on for you, then just layering on more and more skills is not going to solve the problem. You have to work with the individual, and every single individual is so different in terms of how they view themselves, in terms of how they view their capability, in terms of how they show up and self-promote and talk about the value that they're adding. So yeah, 100% there is a gap there for me. And, you know, of course, ladies come to me because they want that sort of opportunity outside of work to talk to somebody who they know is not going to judge them. They know they're not going to have what they're talking about, you know, shared elsewhere, although that should never happen. But those are the kinds of things that I think, you know, women are looking for. And I think the more senior you become, also, it becomes harder to admit those challenges and those vulnerabilities at work. You know, so a lot of the ladies I work with are very senior women, sometimes C-level execs, sometimes senior leadership. And, you know, they cannot sort of find the help that they need internally. They can't talk about the challenges they're having. They can't talk about the skills deficiencies they see that they have. And they certainly can't find anybody to talk about their confidence concerns, because it just undermines their credibility and their brand. So, yeah, 100%. I see, you know, I see what I do as this huge service. And I'm really proud of the work that I do, Steph, because, you know, I know that the women that I speak with, you know, share what they talk with me about with their friends and with their colleagues. And the amount of referrals I get from existing clients to friends and colleagues is quite incredible. And that says to me that A, I'm doing a good job and those clients are getting great results. But B, the thing that I love about that is it's like you're helping people squared. You know, for every person I help, every woman I help, then, you know, she's sharing what she knows with other women, or her daughter, or whoever it might be. That makes me extraordinarily, you know, proud of the work that I do every single day.
And I think if I could take a moment to just share with the listeners, I mean, we've had boundless conversations over
Haven't we
the
just?
years about all manner of things, but you know, of course, as a friend, but in your role as well as a coach, you are entirely empathetic, and I think that that is a trait that I think is so under recognized in a lot of ways, and under recognized in leadership as well, as you say. So, you know, I think it's fantastic that this comes through constantly with you, and to lean on something that you've just said about not just surviving but thriving. I think it's fantastic that you celebrate and acknowledge the surviving, but you know, encourage to thrive, and that's fantastic. And being a woman yourself, um, you know, there are always challenges, and
Yeah.
so do you ever encounter self-doubt, and do you lean on some of your own strategies in those times to sort of propel you through those challenging times?
Another very good question, Steph. I mean, 100%, you know, I think we all have self-doubt. And I actually ran a workshop once where we were talking about doubt and you know, healing self-doubt and working out how to challenge self-doubt. And it is a process going, you know, through that process. It's about unlearning habits that we already have, that we have already decided this is the way that we want to run a belief pattern. But, you know, challenging the belief is part of the process. And I remember one of these ladies putting her hand up in this workshop, and she said, "Rebecca, can I just ask a question?" She said, I'm here just because I want to completely eradicate my self-doubt. And I kind of laughed a little bit because I laugh a lot. And I just said, look, I would love that to be a reality. But the truth is we all have doubt, right? It always happens. It all happens to all of us. And I don't know, you know, what guru is out there saying to you, there is no self-doubt. I don't believe that. I don't think that that's true. And I think, look, the reality is the people who can push through and, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway and all that kind of stuff have just trained themselves over time to challenge the belief that is not serving them faster than the average person. And so we still all have the doubt, we still all have that trigger, but it's the speed at which we address the belief that is holding us back that makes the big difference between people who stay in bed, as I call it, and the people who roar. Like, do you want to roar? Do you want to get out of bed and move ahead? Or do you want to just stay in bed and be sad and unhappy? And I work in acronyms and tools all the day long because I'm training all the time. And bed for me is basically blame, excuses, and doubt. So we stay in bed when we have blame, excuses, and doubt. I don't want to do this. It's somebody else's fault. It's the world's fault. I've got excuses. You know, I'm not good enough, or I'm doubting myself. And if you want to stay in bed and do all that stuff, that's fine. But you can challenge that kind of thinking. 100% you can. And the speed at which you do that is the way that you get out of that and you move through life faster and you achieve more in your life. But, you know, we're intrinsically kind of animalistic characters that have fear in our brains to stop us from really getting to any danger whatsoever, like being hit by a bus as we cross the street. So you still need to have that ability to fear. We all need to have that ability to fear to stay safe, you know. And so I think we need it. It's important that we have those feelings to recognize that we have doubt. You know, it's everything kind of works in polar opposites. To have like complete confidence or to be fearful, you know, everything's always in balance in the world. And the key, I think, always is to seek balance, is to look for balance, is to look to how you can get into the middle somewhere of that spectrum. And your second question, which I thought was really interesting, is 100%, you know, I have doubt and I work on myself a lot and I challenge myself a lot with the strategies that I talk with my clients about all the time. It is about interrupting the pattern. It's about becoming consciously aware of what you're doing first. And then when you have that conscious awareness, you hit what I call a choice point where you can stay in bed and be unhappy, or you can choose to get out of bed and do something different about it, you know? So, you know, little strategies like these all the time, I'm applying to myself all the time, you know, and I think, you know, running a business is hard work. You know, you have a lot of moments of doubt. Can I do this? Is this going to be successful? You know, if I do this, what if it fails? Of course, those kinds of things, you know, come up in your mind and you're concerned about whether or not you're going to be able to do it. But I'm I've kind of done this enough now to know what works, to understand my clients really well and understand the problems that they have, so that I can build courses and training that actually meet the needs, rather than building something that's not going to be valuable. I know intrinsically what my clients need, and I'm there to listen to them and to adapt every single time to every single client to work out what she needs. That's super important to me. But I think, yeah, definitely dealing with doubt is part of something that I teach my clients and share with my clients, and definitely work with on myself all the time. I think a second area is probably around boundaries.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about boundaries and, what is okay, what behavior is okay, and what behavior is not okay. And, I think boundaries also is as much about how you contribute to the relationship, and the boundary either being crossed or not. We have to be really mindful as to how am I actually potentially adding to that behavior being out of whack with that other person? How can I stop that? What can I do differently? And being very confident and honest about your boundaries, I think, is really important, especially when you have any toxic people that you deal with in your life. You have to look after yourself. You have to look after number one. Because if you don't, then there are people around you who love you very much and who value you very much, who won't get the best of you. So I'm a big believer in not letting, those sort of energy vampires suck the life out of you. And therefore, you then don't give your best self to you or to the people who really matter around you. So boundaries is a big one that I talk about a lot with clients, and I definitely work on myself on. And then the third thing, I suppose, is probably around brand and personal brand. I mean, I coach a lot in the area of leadership and personal branding and raising your profile within your corporate environment and helping you build your profile. And I think, of course, as a business owner, that's something I've had to work on too, and become more confident about doing, and understand the strategies that work. What does that look like? And I think a big one in there is backing myself. We have, again, it comes down to doubt and what that looks like. But I think learning how to back yourself is a real skill. And you can easily sort of wait around and hope that other people will validate your position and say that you're doing a good job, rather than you being able to say, what, I know I've done a good job. I know that's, hit the kind of high bar that I've set, or whatever it is. And backing yourself and standing up for yourself and standing up for what you genuinely believe in. And having opinions around that. That's something I've had to absolutely work on in time. It sounds potentially now like that's not the case, not always been the case, but 100% it is. I've had to really work on backing my own opinions and being strong and being confident in sort of situations where that's, that can be challenged. So yeah, I guess there are the three that I work on a lot on myself, and I'm very passionate about for my clients too.
I think they're fantastic, and certainly I think they're things that a lot of women would share as being focus areas for themselves. I'm interested, what would you say to women who might be listening to this podcast and thinking, wow, that sounds amazing. I wish I had that confidence. I wish I knew how to prioritize myself, but there is this, it's not that I really want to stay in bed. I just don't know any other way. What advice would you give them to, take the first step?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a coach, I would always say to them, you already know the answer to that. And there's this beautiful game that I play with a lot of clients where I say to them, I want you to imagine yourself literally floating out of yourself right now and going and sitting in that big tree up there, the metaphorical tree just there, and looking down on yourself in bed, right? And I want the lady in the tree to give the lady in the bed some advice as to what she should do. And what would be your piece of advice? And that's what I would suggest. That's what I would say. We all have choices every single day that we make. And some of those choices are in alignment with our values and our goals and our vision and our ambitions. And some of them just aren't. And I think you're the only person who genuinely knows whether or not that's the case. You're the only person. And you're also the only person who can make that decision to do something differently. And, a decision only has to be a 3-second little moment in your life where you say, you know what, enough. I'm not going to settle anymore for this. This is not okay anymore. I deserve more than this. And that can be a big leap for people, right? That's, you have to kind of get to a point where you really are ready and committed. And I say that to clients, I said, don't come and work with me unless you're ready, until you're committed, until this is something you really, really want. Because as soon as we get started, right? And we start working on all sorts of aspects of your mindset and your personal brand strategy and your leadership strategy and all sorts of skills and communication and strategic thinking. There's so many things that happen, right? Based on what that client needs. And you will wake up one day and you will decide you're ready. This is enough. This is too mediocre. I'm settling for something average. I deserve better, and those are the kinds of thought processes I think that a lot of my clients go through. But it has to be in your own time. I'm a big believer in feeling the feelings.
Yep.
And, when you're feeling sad, feel sad. And when you're feeling annoyed, feel annoyed, and frustrated. But these are all signals to us that our values are being compromised. Yeah, when we're feeling that way, it says to us something important to us is being compromised. And for everybody, again, it's different, whatever the value might be. But it's a beautiful, little wake up call saying to you, hey, this really important thing for you, maybe it's learning, or maybe it's, getting a fix of, I don't know, it could be anything, achievement. It could be stretch. It could be variety. A lot of people say, I'm in the same job. It's just been the same old, same old. And that says to me straight away that person values variety. And she needs more variety in her world, right? So there are values that are being compromised when we're unhappy.
Yeah.
There's something that's out of whack. And I think that's the starting point always. What is it that's actually being compromised here? What do I actually need that's missing? And if you start asking those kinds of questions to yourself, you'll start understanding whether or not you're ready to challenge it and do something new.
That's fantastic, Bex. And, I think what you've achieved thus far is incredible. And these 100 episodes of the podcast, a fitting finish to this interview would be,
absolutely,
what's next for you? What's the next milestone? Do you balance that with a personal milestone, or are you looking towards, let's set the next professional milestone?
I love that. Let's end on another question. Okay. So yeah, what is next? It's such a good question. You know what? I'm always, one of my big values is creativity. And a part of that is imagination, of course. And I'm always dreaming big, and I'm always looking at what the next big things are going to be for the business, and what do clients need? What do those ladies out there need that I can help them with, And look, we're building more and more training programs. So we have training programs in career development, and when we're feeling lost in our career, and what do we need and what do we want, and what's my value, and how do I sort of talk about that value, and how do I tangibly kind of explain my value. We have programs in personal branding and raising your credibility and visibility with stakeholders around you. We have trainings in leadership. We're building out new trainings in how we think and how we communicate, because those are big parts of how we actually elevate our executive profile, in terms of how we share our thinking and how we obviously communicate and influence the people around us. So we're building new exciting courses for 2024 as well. And workshops, we have workshops coming up as well in 2024. We do workshops in salary negotiation, in positioning for promotion. And we also are going to be doing a live workshop event in Sydney, which is very exciting. I love doing live workshops. We had that big break with COVID and everything like that, but there are going to be some big live events coming up really soon as well, which I'm always so excited about. And look, it's always juggled and balanced around my life and my beautiful family. I have 2 young kids, and my own sanity. I really enjoy my own space and my own time, and making sure that I get out there walking and out in nature. It's a big part of my life, and hanging with my friends. My friends are a big part of my life too. And laughing a lot. Laughing is so important.
Well.
Keep yourself sane, and just to see the light side of life, because there's so much joy and beauty in life. And it's it's a constant, drive to meet my values, Steph, to be honest. Family and love and play and joy and, expansion and learning. These are all really big parts of my world. So I shall be thriving to meet my values as much as I can.
Well, there's no better way to end this.
Really? That was almost like, I should have an Oscar for that, actually. That was good, wasn't it?
Congratulations on your 100th
thanks, Steph.
Ladies.
We're still continuing the podcast, by the way. It's going to continue. There's so many cool interviews lined up. Yeah.
And ladies, that, as you would have just heard, there's a smorgasbord on offer that will be provided by Bex with her business. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to what's to come.
Thanks so much, Steph. Thank you, everyone who's listening.